Hello, hello, and welcome. I am here with Sarah. Our apologies. We had some technical things we had to sort out, but we are here now. Sarah is going to be talking to us about how to be a conscious leader and how to really figure out how to lead from an enlightened and connected way is probably the best way to describe it, so that you can actually get the people that you work with and that work for you to give you their best and to be their best people. So Sarah, if you are almost ready here, I will hand this off to you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, and welcome to everybody. We were just messing about with the technology here. That's a very technical word for getting to grips with the new technology, but I'm here to welcome you on our short journey this evening around enlightened leadership or conscious leadership. And I'm looking forward to diving into this hot topic with you. Now, what I would like to do before we get started is just take a moment to connect. And what I would like to do is to take you through a process that some of you may have heard of, some of you may not, or you may have experienced something similar. So it's something that's perfectly safe to do. It really helps enhance connection. So what I would like you to do is, obviously taking care of your own well-being and health, is if you can, plant your feet on the floor, close your eyes, take some deep breaths and just relax. And just feel that connection to source, spirit, the divine energy, whatever you wish to call it, whatever it is you believe in, connect to that wonderful, peaceful energy and just shake off the day. And I'm going to say a statement that aligns us to source, to the divine. And all you need to do is just relax and breathe. Just listen and let everything just flow. Let everything go that's been on your mind for the day. So I'm going to read through this now. I know that I, Sarah, and everybody that's on this live stream is connected to the divine joyous energy. I know that there is an abundant energy, an abundant source that teaches us how to lead, how to live, how to love, how to live in compassion, faith, and joy. I know that there is this divine source throughout the universe, through all creatures, all people, everything in this world and beyond, everything that we see and we don't see is connected by source. And because we know that this unity is true, I now know that it's true for everybody in this live stream today. Everybody that's here. We are all one. There is no duality, there's unity as we align to our higher purpose, our higher source, our higher truth. And take a moment to absorb that. And knowing that this is the truth, knowing that this is the truth of our universe and beyond our own universe, beyond what we can see, I now affirm that everybody here is showered in light and learning and faith and compassion and joy, or some of those qualities that belong to the divine, that belong to spirit, that every single person is aligned to that truth, aligned to those qualities. And we feel those qualities, we inhabit those qualities, we live those qualities. I now say and declare that I'm so very grateful, as I know each and every one of us are. We're grateful for this truth. We're grateful for this alignment. We are so very blessed in this moment, in every single moment by moment, day by day, week by week, year by year. We are truly blessed. And I release this treatment with gratitude, love, and joy, knowing that for each and every one, what we wish to learn, what we wish to fulfill in our life is coming to fruition for our highest good. And I'm now releasing the statement with love, joy, and light, as I say, and so it is. Now, for some of you, that might be something you've experienced before. Just to give a bit of an explanation, it's called a spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. and mind being the universal mind, the greater mind, the mind that we don't see but we feel and we can feel alignment to. And it's just another practice that maybe you've tried before or you wish to try. If it's something you're interested in learning about, then do get in touch. I'll share my details throughout this session, because what we're really saying is that we're all one, we're united, we're one energy. We're in this expansive universe. There is only expansion. We're not begging for anything to happen. We're affirming our truth, and we're affirming what we believe, those spiritual qualities, and what we would like to happen in our lives. And it's a really powerful treatment. There's a specific structure to it, and I'm happy to share any insights or follow up with you afterwards. Sometimes I write them for people, sometimes I record them. And that one, I just decided to do it tonight to try something different. So I hope you enjoyed it. So we're going to take a journey on conscious leadership. And for those of you that are on the chat, if you've got time and the ability, could you perhaps jump in the chat and think about, what does enlightened or conscious leadership mean to you? Any words, there's no right or wrong answers, just anything that you feel comes to mind, because I'm going to be sharing some of these with you about what enlightened and conscious leadership means. So if you have any comments. Great. Thank you. Thank you for these lovely comments. I can see me looking at my phone. Anyway, so enlightened leadership, conscious leadership, let's get right into it and keep those comments coming. Connection, thank you very much. Absolutely. So let's get going, because I was a bit late starting. So this is what we're going to cover today. I'm going to cover what is enlightened leadership, what is conscious leadership, how it can help you personally and professionally, and I'll share some tools, tips and techniques to help you on this journey. You may already be on this journey, or you may well be thinking about it, but we're going to take a trot through conscious leadership. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my story in terms of my journey in conscious leadership. So I work with teams, I work with leaders, I work with executives who feel that they've lost their purpose. They may be having recurring themes of conflict or career dissatisfaction. They feel a bit adrift. They don't feel aligned to what they're doing. They don't feel like they're in the flow. And it's really interesting, because I got a lot of this conscious leadership work over my own consciousness journey. When I was a leader myself in my former career, I worked for some great organizations, and I really enjoyed being a leader, because one of my values is teamwork and really being able to bring out the best in other people. Now, none of us are perfect. What's perfect? We all have good days, bad days, but we can really pivot when we're connected to source. And I felt this was really important to me. So I've been on this journey for about 30 years in terms of studying, qualifying at the Centres of Spiritual Living. I'm a registered spiritual practitioner. And over that journey, I've learned and grown as a person. And I really brought that into my leadership journey early on. It really aligned to my values of working with my team and putting my team first. That didn't mean abandoning self-care. But what it did mean was thinking about, well, for example, Nicola, what's important to you in your life, in your journey, in your career? Okay, let's have a conversation about that. How can I help you really live your life to its fullest purpose? Now, I may not have used spiritual terms, but it was a conversation that I addressed and a belief that I had. So this was my journey, and I just really wanted people who I was working with to have fun, to enjoy themselves, to grow. Or if somebody said, you know what, Sarah, I'm happy in the same role, I'm happy to stay here, absolutely fine, absolutely no judgment. But I really wanted to bring my leadership from the inside out rather than reacting from the outside in. So that was my journey. I moved into coaching. I've published a book, which you can see below, which has a lot of techniques and tools in there for helping you align to source. Now, let's dive into leadership. Which one do you think is perhaps a more balanced and healthy style of leadership? I'll give you a clue. It's this one. It's the one in the middle. So this is a great piece of work from a gentleman called Kenny Chapman. He says that there's this unconscious leadership, then there's conscious leadership, and then there's anti-conscious leadership. And I am sure throughout your careers, you've had examples, possibly more of 1 and 3, the one here and the one here. Sometimes you might have been lucky enough to meet the leader that's in the middle, that conscious leadership piece, that awareness, that enlightened leader. That unconscious leadership is someone who is not really alert or aware of what they're doing. One of my clients was talking to me about a post-it note leader who never actually spoke to her, never met her for 6 months, but he was a post-it note leader. I would call that an example of unconscious leadership. And when I'm sharing these examples, I'm not meaning to judge, because people do what they do, they know what they know, and everybody's on their own journey. But that's definitely an example of unconscious leadership. On the other hand, you've got the anti-conscious leadership, that really bullish, quite dogmatic, authoritarian style of leadership, which I'm sure many of you have witnessed before. So here on Earth, in our coat of skins, our suit that we wear here on Earth, we know that we're in a world that is quite volatile, it's quite uncertain, it's quite complex, and it's quite ambiguous. And I think we know more about those ambiguities than we ever did before. I'm just having a look at the comments, actually. So we are much more aware of some of the issues that are going on geopolitically in every which way with social media, etc. So aligning to source, aligning to your beliefs and holding on to your values is more important than ever. And actually, it's super important when we're facing challenges. Not always easy to do, not always easy to do. But if you can keep the faith, I found for me that when I was going through challenges in my career, even if I could just say one word, faith, 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 Spirit's got my back, the universe has got my back. That wasn't me outsourcing my own personal responsibilities in this coat of skin here on Earth, but it was just those gentle reminders. If I was busy, if there was a lot going on, if I could just say those words, that's still a connection, that's still something. So it can be challenging, but it's like going to the gym, flexing that spiritual muscle. We work on this, don't we? But sometimes we forget about this and we forget about this. So even in those challenging times, it's important to remember our spiritual practices and align, even if it's just one word, even if you're going through something trying. And this is true if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, or if you're working in an organization, or in your personal life, there might be something going on. So what happens at work? Let's get this stuff out the way first. I've got a chart here about stress, and some of you may have seen it. Now, sometimes we look at stress and think, oh, that's a really terrible word. But actually, sometimes stress can be quite good for us. It's called eustress. It's that optimal level of stress. And it isn't negative. It's about being in the flow, being in the zone. You might be busy, you might have a lot on, but you're really enjoying what you're doing. You really are in the flow, and your performance is really, really good. You feel like you're flying, that things are going really, really well. And then we get to the other side, which is when I was talking before about the volatility and uncertainty, different things stress people out too much. So we get that reaction to stress, which is burnout, which is stress over a prolonged period of time. So it's important to recognize those two. So I'm just touching on the earthly bits at the moment, just to explain that sometimes stress can be okay. It might feel a bit like pressure, but hopefully it's good pressure, because for many of you here, you're doing what you love to do. Perhaps, for example, you feel a bit nervous about coming on and speaking to people you've never met before, but perhaps that can galvanize you to really energize your audience, engage with your audience, ask questions, for example. But for some of us, that might be something that tips them over the edge, but they might be really good at other things, being in the zone, in the flow, in other ways. So let's get that out of the way first. Now, let's stay on planet Earth for the moment and look at these. What a lovely list of factors these are about things that happen at work. These are some of the areas where even the most self-aware and conscious leaders can become quite triggered. They can struggle. And even if you are a connected leader, that's why the consistent spiritual practices or whatever practices, whatever your faith is really, really important. I call it that constant communion. And sometimes after a while, that can happen very subconsciously. So, for example, if you're having a conflict with somebody, in the back of your mind, there's that program running about, I'm aligned to my higher self. And that gives you a much better chance of being in the right frame of mind, that open, receptive mindset that allows you to grow and learn perhaps from conflict. I'll share an example. Many years ago, I was working for a pharmaceutical company, and there was a gentleman who was in the medical team, and the medical team scrutinized a lot of materials, scrutinized a lot of the work that I was doing, and quite rightly so, because they have to check for accuracy, medical accuracy. So it's for an important reason. And they're held to the very highest standards because they're healthcare professionals, they're doctors. And I noticed this gentleman that was working for the same company. And I had a meeting with him. I had a few meetings with him. And people said to me, oh, Sarah, how did you get on with him? He's a nightmare. He's really difficult. And I said, is he? Okay. Well, I'd made a decision before that meeting. I'd heard the rumours, but I decided I'm going to see the positive intent behind every behaviour. It might not be something that here on planet Earth I would necessarily agree with or align with, but I'm going to try and find what is the positive intent behind the way this person is quite stridently communicating. Now, it probably helps that I'm quite a resilient, tenacious person. I can be quite assertive myself. So I was able to match him at that level, but I made that decision to go in with an open mindset and think about, I'm not going to buy into all these rumors. I'm not going to buy into this negativity. I'm going to see the truth of who you are, that you are also a spiritual being. You are part of this universe. And I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to see what your positive intent is. Now, that allowed me to listen. When we listen, we learn. It allowed me to ask questions, to gather information, to understand where he was coming from. And we got on really, really well. The other thing I would mention, however, is about self-care in those particular situations. If you are running your own business or you're in a line of work and it really is getting too much, then self-care is also a spiritual practice. Being selfish is not a bad thing if it's about looking after yourself, your spiritual health, and your well-being. And sometimes the best thing you can do is silently bless someone and let them go, rather than sort of pursuing with energy. So you might have that situation where you've tried that and that hasn't really worked and it's draining you. And this might be a sign. Sometimes we get these signs, don't we? When things aren't working out, we get these signs. Thank you. Positive intent behind the actions. Thank you. I'm glad you like that. I'm just reading the comments, sorry. So sometimes letting go is a really healthy spiritual practice. And some of these you might recognize. You might be an entrepreneur and you're thinking, yeah, I've recognized some of these. I'm running my own business. Or you might recognize some of these things in your past career. So these are some of the areas where we can dip into lower self. And there's much more than that come into play as well. But let's move on. Let's hopefully move on. Hang on a minute. My mouse is stuck. That's not good. Let's see if I can try this. Here we go. Oh, now it's flipped. Bear with me, callers. Sorry, this doesn't usually happen. I don't know what it is. Okay, so you might have met somebody like this. Now, babies are full of joy, full of excitement, but sometimes it might feel like you're dealing with a baby, somebody that's in their very lower self. And this is not conscious leadership. Somebody who consistently practices these behaviors is not the kind of leader that we want to be, the kind of business owners we want to be? Well, I hope not, because you're all on this summit. So I'm assuming you will come from a place of trying to be in an expansive energy, being in your higher self. This is real lower self behavior. And remember, this isn't about you. This is not about you. I work with people from CEOs, vice presidents, to managers, to people career shifting, business owners. And it doesn't matter how many years experience that you have in your career. It doesn't matter how many people you manage. If you work with people in this way, in this lower self way, it's not tolerated as much as it used to be. There used to be one size fits all type of leadership. I don't know if that rings a bell with anyone. Does anyone else say ring a bell? We say that in the UK for those of you overseas. Does that sound familiar? There used to be a one size fits all to leadership. That is not the case anymore. Companies are starting to address these behaviours. Companies are starting to look for more conscious behaviours. Now, do they always talk about them in terms of spirituality and consciousness? Some organisations do, and some do not. But this is really coming into play now, that the acceptance of spiritual beliefs, consciousness, is really coming to the forefront, and the different interpretations of conscious leadership. And what we don't want leaders like this. Now, the problem is, as I mentioned, you can have a lot of experience, but very little self-awareness. And I'm not trying to judge people here, because we're all on a journey. You know, we're very much like layers of the onion. You learn something, you peel another layer. You learn something, you peel another layer. And I know for many of you here, you're very connected to your beliefs. So that's with that spiritual maturity and experience, you start peeling away more layers of the onion, and you get flashes of intuition. Oh yeah, maybe I could have done that differently. Maybe that wasn't quite the right way to do it. We're only human after all. So this is not conscious leadership, as you can tell by the very unhappy baby sitting there. I always think that bosses that aren't particularly, or colleagues that aren't particularly helpful, they're a bit childlike. Sorry, I did just say that. Now, let's think about this. Leadership. What is leadership? And feel free to put comments in the chat. Oh, I'm really enjoying these comments. Thank you so much. For me, and I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, leadership isn't about authority, power, and leading teams. It might be on a business card, it might be on an organization chart, but is that really all that leadership is about? For me, it's about a mindset. It's about saying, maybe I don't want to be the passenger on my own journey. Maybe I want to be the pilot. Maybe I want to be open to intuition and learning and growth and development. And for me, it is that mindset. And I would say that higher self mindset when we're talking about conscious leadership. And leadership for me doesn't have to be about work. It doesn't have to be about being a business owner. It can be about being a human being in a spiritual universe, living in this big mind that we live in, this higher power, whatever you choose to believe in, whatever your faith is. For me, it's a mindset, knowing that there is something greater than us, knowing that we can put our ego to one side and know that whatever happens, everything's going to be okay, because there's a higher power, there's a source, there's a universe. And when we think in this way, I sometimes call it inside out leadership. I think, as I mentioned before, I'm leading from the inside. I'm not reacting all the time to the outside inputs. And why am I not doing that? Because I can't control any of that. I can't really control much about any of that. Yes, in certain situations, I might vote for a politician. I might choose where I buy my food. I might choose who I date. I might choose my friendships. I might find myself instantly connected to people. Those are some things that I can influence. But really, the thing that we can master is our truth. That's us as human beings, but also our spiritual truth. And those two things are not in opposition. It's not about duality, it's about unity. There's no separation. There is no separation between us and what else is happening in this universe. We have to put the ego to one side. Was it Wayne, excuse me, was it Wayne Dyer that said, do you know what ego stands for? Edge God out. Now, for some of you, God might not be a word that you would choose to use, but I'm using it as an example. And sometimes leadership can be about ego. And we have to check in with ourselves and think, why am I doing this? Is it for my ego? Am I really trying to help other people? Now, obviously, by helping others, we get a benefit from that because we feel good. But then that circulates a flow of serotonin and all these other chemicals that are really important to us as human beings to connect as a community. So we have to let the ego go, and we have to realize there is something that I can really master. It could be my faith, it could be my spiritual serenity and peace. It could be how I choose to respond rather than react. Because when we're reacting to what's coming outside of us. And guess what? We can't control it. And when we think like that, it's actually quite comforting. I find it quite comforting because you let go of a whole load of stuff that you think, do you know what? Maybe that's just not right for me. Maybe that just isn't the right situation for me. Have you ever had those situations at work or with a business where the same situation keeps happening, or you have a similar experience and then suddenly you think, there's a pattern here. Right, I'm starting to get what this pattern is, and it's time to let this piece go, whatever it might be. It might be that client that you just can't seem to connect with no matter how hard you try because of certain behaviors. So we can control what's here. I don't actually like using the word control. I like to use the word master, that spiritual mastery. And when we do that, guess what? Vibrationally, it has a ripple effect. Leadership is so much about how we can help people to feel a certain way. It's not always about the words that we say, the actions that we take. It's how people feel when we walk in a room, when we leave a room. I know we're not perfect. I know we all have moments. But just if you are having one of those busy moments, just take that moment, pause, just think, God's got my back. Universe is with me. And with conscious leadership, as I mentioned, it's more about not just about professional leadership. I think if you're being a conscious leader, you have to be, that sounds very direct. It's beneficial to really be steeped in consciousness or start to explore consciousness on a deeper level, because it will just help you let go so much. You'll let go of your ego, you'll have better relationships and many, many other benefits. And actually, if you think about it, I learned this when I was doing my Centers of Spiritual Leader training. We talked about being in communion with Source or Spirit, Divinity, Energy, however you wish to call it, whatever you wish to call it. And we're constantly vibrating backwards and forwards, passing messages, sending out vibrations. So whether we're aware of it or not, we're passing out those vibrations. And sometimes people pick that off from us, and then it can get magnified. So let's just try and become more aware of, let's just affirm, I'm in constant communion with Source. Source is always there. And then that kind of opens more of a channel to listen and adapt and grow, both personally and professionally. I wanted to share a couple of examples of conscious leadership, just very briefly. Aligning to purpose. Now, for you and many of you, this will be definitely a spiritual purpose, a conscious purpose. It's translated in many different ways in business. Conscious leadership means different things to different people. For some people, it is very much about what we might call typical consciousness, spiritual practices, meditation, mindfulness. But for other people, it's about being in that flow, creating a business that's aligned to values, and that's still conscious. That's still bringing something good to the universe, to the people that you work with, to having that ripple effect, that vibration on other people. So, for example, the Container Store, we don't have them in the UK, but they were paying employees double what anybody else was paying, because the CEO said, the people working in my store are just as important as my other managers. So I feel I want to go above and beyond what people would typically be paid for that role. And look at it now with all the discussion around gender parity, gender balance in terms of pay equity. So he made a conscious decision of, yep, I value this team, I appreciate this team, I'm going to pay them twice what the market would say I should pay them. And there's another company called Tiny Dots, and I love this story. There was a gentleman who spent a lot of time in hospital, I think it was in the US, in and out of hospital as a child, and he felt that he couldn't understand what was being discussed about his medical conditions, what they were talking about, some of the terminology. He felt very lost and confused. Now, he then went on to create a whole suite of materials and tools for parents and children to understand those areas very clearly, to see the world through children's eyes when they're going through some medical experiences. And I would say that's spiritual, that's being conscious, that's being aware of your values and being in the flow. And it's a very successful company, because when we're in that zone, when we're in that flow, we tend to be more successful. So, what do you think can help you or anyone you know to become a more conscious and enlightened leader? And I'm going to squint at my phone because my eyesight's a bit for me, leadership is about connection and intention to work together to prosper. I love that word, prosperity. It's rather like abundance and wealth. It means so many things. It's an energy, it's a vibration. Spirit wants us to be prosperous in many, many ways. Let's just have a look at the other comments. Yep. So if you've got any other ideas of what can help you become a conscious leader, I'd be happy to hear them. If not, as if by magic, here we go. And if anybody would like a copy of these slides, I'm sure we can share them with you somehow. I'm absolutely happy to do that. I can share them as a PDF. So, leadership, consciousness, can it coexist? Yes, because of what we talked about. We're unified. We're in this big field of energy, this big expansive universe, more than one universe. We don't know everything. We can never be so arrogant to think we know everything there is to know. And I'm sure many of us don't think that, but we're unified. We're part of a bigger piece here. This isn't about separation. This isn't about ego. And we can make a decision, a conscious decision to be a conscious leader. How do we do that? Now, I'm sure many of you have spiritual practices and tools that you use. I like to use affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment. So in the morning when I'm walking around the house, I'm talking to myself quite a lot. I've got the affirmations going. I pick up a book. There's some books that I really, really love that have some amazing quotes. Neville Goddard, Ernest Holmes, This Thing Called You. It has some wonderful statements in there about being aligned with the universe. And his work, as with a lot of other writers and teachers, came from exploring different religions, different traditions, Eastern and Western belief systems, and looking at it and saying, what do they all have in common? The belief in something greater, bigger than us, that's a part of us. Some of you may well believe something differently, and that's absolutely fine. It's about the qualities as well that we wish to explore and align to. So it's about that conscious decision of realizing, yes, we are all one in this big universe, this unified field, this field of energy. And these are some of the behaviors that we can start to practice. Now, I use this in my coaching all the time. I worked with someone recently who was a very senior VP. He came to speak to me. We did it on Zoom, actually, because he was overseas. And he said, Sarah, there's something not right. I just feel out of alignment. When he used that word alignment, would you mind me asking you, Juan, can I ask what your beliefs are? Do you believe in spiritual topics? Do you read spiritual books, spiritual practices? And he was like, mm-hmm. And so my job there was really to help him align to what his career could be after having spent years doing a similar role for many years. And I could see it on his face that it was just what he was doing wasn't allowing him to connect to his truth anymore. And that was a sign. I said, Juan, that's not something wrong. That's something right. This is a great problem to have because it tells me that you're awake, you're listening, you're communing with spirit, you're picking up messages from here, your intuition, which is all part of this universe. You'll see that many of the practices here are being talked about a lot in leadership, maybe not in overtly spiritual terms that some of us might use. We all use different words for different things. That's absolutely fine. But a lot of these techniques are moving into mainstream business practice. Some of these are ways of being, some of these are behaviors, and some of these are practices. And I'm sure many of you may use some of these tactics or behaviors on a day-to-day basis. There's something I really like that Abraham Hicks talks about. It's one of their processes. Turn it over to the universal manager, let go. So, for example, if I've got a problem that I'm dwelling on, something's on my mind, I might go to bed, when we're in deep dream state, our subconscious starts working and sorting things out for us. We're really aligned in that deep sleep phase. I'll just say, okay, universe, I'm going to turn it over to you. What should I do about this? And then very often, it might not be the next day, I'll get bing, 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 and I get some kind of message. There's another part, another practice, which some of you may well have heard of that I haven't put on here, which is heart-brain cohesion. I don't know if any of you have heard of that in terms of really trying to stem the thinking. We're here a lot, aren't we? And we want to be here. We want to be here. Our brain has got a heart. Our heart's got a brain. It's all intertwined. If you listen and watch talks from people like Greg Braden, absolutely fantastic. He talks about coherence, and I think Lynn McTaggart, she's another great author, I think she talks about this as well, and be able to sit there and go, just switch off the thinking. What does my heart truly desire? What does spirit truly desire? And trying to slow down the thinking until you don't really feel that there's conscious thoughts. You're really aligned to source, to spirit, and from there you do get a lot of inspiration. So that's quite a deeply conscious practice, but many of these are behaviors that organizations are trying to encourage their leaders to practice. So there's some ideas for you there about behaviors, things you may be doing already. I've talked about seeing the positive intent, but look at these characteristics. These are all spiritual characteristics, aren't they? Authenticity, integrity, responding, contemplating. Contemplating is so important. Just be quiet and listen what messages you're getting, being present with others. So let's not forget, human beings, not human doings. And on earth, sometimes we feel like human doings, but we are human beings. We are a bunch of chemicals and hormones and feelings. And as human beings, I know some of us may prefer to be at home, maybe work at home, more of that alone time, and that's fine. But on some level, we want to connect. And the great thing is, if you can connect to that higher purpose, it really helps you build this self-awareness, the intuition, the purpose, understanding your purpose, resilience as well, empathy, humility, compassion. These are all conscious leadership skills. And the way we do that is like going to the gym, but doing it for our minds. And we can do it anytime. Yes, you may have a set routine where you like to do things in the morning, or have a certain schedule you like to stick to. That's absolutely fine. But you can do it anytime. Busy? Yeah. Spirit's got my back. How can I see something positive in this, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time? That constant communion and connection. So, how does it help in the workplace? These spiritual characteristics are now more and more weaving their way into corporate life. These are some of the benefits. And I picked out some quotes that shows you the different dimensions of conscious leadership. There are many different definitions of it. And as I said, there There are some folk that really align to that deep spiritual belief, but for others, it is about thinking about a bigger purpose, thinking about other people, which is spiritual in itself. That is a spiritual practice, realizing that you're making a contribution. You might be an organization making money, but with that money comes a flow of energy where you're also contributing to society, to other groups. You're using your money, your prosperity in a very ethical way. You're helping others. A quote at the bottom there from Raj Sisodia. He is somebody who has written, I think he runs a company called Conscious Capitalism. Capitalism and consciousness, how can the two go together? Well, they can. You know, we make judgments on certain words here, but actually money, if you think about money and wealth, what's money? Energy. Yes, it's bits of paper or other bits of plastic or rather our phones that we tap, but money is energy. It's an energy, and it's about our attitude towards money, and it is about how we choose to use our money, use our resources. And conscious capitalism actually marries the idea that yes, you can be in a free market economy, you can be a capitalist, but actually there's a bigger truth behind why you do this. So I'd recommend reading some of his work. John Mackey, I've got a picture of his book. He was one of the first people to write about conscious leadership. He led Whole Foods, which some of you may have heard of. It now belongs to somebody else, I think. I think it got bought out. But you can see here, you know, he's talking about how conscious leaders have awareness of why they are doing things, that purpose. Remember I talked about tiny dots, that had a purpose. What we were talking about earlier, not about titles or positions or flowcharts, one life influencing another, that interconnectivity. Conscious leadership, helping your team, living a life without regrets, saying to your colleague, Nicola, what is it you want from your life? What is it that's really important to you? Okay, let's figure out how we do that for you. Let's make this really work for you. For me, I felt so happy when I could really help my team have a fulfilled life outside of work as well as inside of work. And you cannot be a conscious leader without being a conscious human being. Now you can take conscious to mean awake, connected, somebody that's very deep into their spiritual practices. It doesn't matter. It's about that awareness. These are some of the benefits, and there is data upon data upon data about how it really helps companies to retain staff, perform better, give more to society, have a high return on what they're making, learning, growth, growing employees, happiness in business and work. And guess what? When we're happy in our professional lives, we're happy in our personal lives, because it is all kind of one life, isn't it? If we think in the spiritual sense, it allows that connection and empowerment, it allows that innovation, and it allows you to face some of these conflicts and go, And there is such a thing called positive conflict, because I do a report on it for my clients. It's about conscious positive conflict, seeing that there is an upside, that there is a benefit to working through conflicts. These things aren't always things to be afraid of, unless obviously you're in physical harm or anything like that, which hopefully you're not. But there is a positive upside, and yet we avoid these things so much. We shrink down rather than expand out and go, okay, let's have a conversation. It's about communication. And communication is really important. It improves communication. Let's have a look. Oh, thank you for your... Oh, I'm loving the comments. Thank you. But yes, there are so many benefits and data about how conscious leadership helps. A couple of resources for you. I would actually recommend, there's a fantastic book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And when you read this book, for those of you that are very into your spirituality, very connected, won't necessarily be anything new to you, because you'll look at it and go, yeah, they're all higher self characteristics. And if you look up 15 commitments of conscious leadership, you can actually download the PDF. There's a PDF online. But what it's saying is we're above the line. We're open, we're curious, we're open, we're committed to learning. What does that sound like? Above the line, above the line, above the line, aligned. we're above, we're empowered. We're not below the line, where we're closed, where we're not connected to source, where we're not defensive, and we have to be right all the time. I mean, give me a thumbs up if you've been wrong this week. In fact, I'm going to thumbs up myself. There we go. Bing. So 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's a really great book. They do training courses. I've trained in it as well. And the gentleman I was talking about, John Mackey, Conscious Leadership, a bit more of a detailed piece about how he saw his vision as a conscious leader when he was setting up Whole Foods and taking that responsibility as a business for how you run your business, how you make your money, what you do with it, and how you work with every single person in your ecosystem as a business. Now, anyone recognize this? Has anyone ever had a moment like this? The drama triangle. We've got the victim. I have to do this. It's so hard. The villain. Right, who did this? Whose fault is it? And the hero. I can handle it. I can help. Remember those 3 circles at the beginning? You can see where that plays into this drama triangle. Now, what we can do is at the top here, this diagram that I'm pointing at just here on the left from, I think it's from Gay Hendricks. You may have heard of him. He writes a lot about conscious leadership as well. Presence. We are in our own presence. We're in spiritual presence. We're there. We're aligned. Yeah, it's great. I'm leading my team. I'm running my business. Everything's good. Uh-oh, something unexpected happens. Woo. I'm going to start drifting. I'm going to start drifting. And then I'm really, oh, hang on. If I'm conscious, I'm going to stop drifting. I'm not going to be the passenger on my journey in leadership, personal or professional. I'm going to be the pilot. Adjust the rudder. I'm not drifting anymore. I've shifted and I'm back to being in that bigger presence. But if you look below, if we don't manage that drift, we get into the drama triangle. So sometimes if you are feeling a bit triggered, keep a memo. That's an old word, isn't it? Keep a journal or on your iPhone or however you like to do it on your iPad. If you have some moments that are really triggering, write them down and go, that's really interesting. Where does that come from? And just leave yourself with that question if you don't know the answer straight away. Let's be patient with ourselves. Remember, peeling the onion, and think about what's triggered you. Am I perhaps buying into this triangle here? And do I just need to stop? Take a deep breath, gain composure, go for a walk, whatever you need to do to feel aligned and stop the drift. So that is all about conscious leadership. I've given you a few tools and techniques. I've given you some resources. I highly recommend the 15 Practices, Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's quite a nice book to read. I'm sure there's lots of stuff on YouTube as well. So it's really about, for me, that inside out leadership. Remember, we can't control this, everything else here, but we can master and start to manage certain things within ourselves. And spirituality, discovering consciousness, and I'm so glad I did in my 20s because it helped me through my career. Remember that those are things that we can start to unravel, unpeel, understand, and align to source. And the more you do it, the better it gets. Believe you me, we can just let go of some of this stuff and we can really embrace who we're working with, even though they might be very different from us. We can be our whole genuine, authentic person. We can be open and receptive. When you're open and receptive to others, you're also open and receptive to that higher source, the energy in the universe. It's about allowing that circulation, the law of circulation to take place. And for me, leadership is a privilege. For me and people I've worked with that have had an impact on my life, I'm never going to forget those people. I want to make a positive impact on people's lives. That's why I like helping people in leadership, people that are struggling with their careers, because people are just sometimes a bit caught in that drift. So it's about leading from the inside out, because on the inside we know who we are. We know we're aligned. We know we are all together in this wonderful universe that, despite the uncertainty, is a beautiful place to be. So I'd like to thank you for being here today. And if you'd like some more information, there's some links here around my spiritual coaching and my website. So thank you very much.